Okay, so would you prefer 100 pounds in 12 months or 110 pounds in 13 months? Take a second, think about it. Most of us, when we look at that scenario, we gladly choose to wait the extra month for the extra 10 pounds. The delay just seems, well, trivial when it's that far out, right? But now, let me ask you the second part of this. What if I offered you 100 pounds today or 110 pounds tomorrow? Suddenly, that extra 10 pounds doesn't look quite so appealing, does it? It's crazy because the weight is exactly the same. 1 month in the first scenario, 1 day in the second. But the second you introduce an immediate reward, our patience just completely shudders. This right here is the classic preference reversal paradox. Our plans are remarkably patient from a distance, but they just crumble the exact moment temptation is right in front of us.
So, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to completely decode the fascinating math and psychology behind time, temptation, and what we call the divided self. We'll be drawing heavily on Dr. Erlander Johnson's incredibly comprehensive work on behavioral economics and ethics. We're going to explore exactly how we make choices across time, why we so often fail to keep our own promises to ourselves, and, maybe most importantly, how markets are exquisitely designed to capitalize on those exact predictable failures. Really, if you've ever wondered why your future self never seems to make it to the gym while your present self stays happily glued to the couch, you are definitely in the right place.
Here is our quick roadmap for today. First, the math of temptation, then naivety and the divided self, followed by markets that exploit you, and finally, we'll wrap up with the ethics of intervention.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, the math of temptation. To actually understand why we act the way we do, we first have to look at the foundational math. For a really long time, standard economics relied on Paul Samuelson's 1937 model of exponential discounting. And look, it's beautifully simple. It's totally rational. It basically assumes a constant rate of decline. So if you value tomorrow 10% less than today, well, you value next year 10% less than the year before it. It's neat. It creates time-consistent plans. But as we literally just saw in our opening question, humans aren't quite that neat. Real human behavior is much, much better described by what's called hyperbolic discounting. This model features a tremendously steep fall in value in the near term, which then levels out to a shallow decline for the distant future. It's the absolute mathematical root of why you plan to read a difficult book on Thursday, but when Thursday actually rolls around, you just binge watch TV instead. The circumstances haven't changed at all. Literally, only your distance from the present has changed. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what I mean. Notice that heavy pink shaded area on the left of the chart? That is the preference reversal zone. So the teal line, that's the exponential function. It's a smooth, constant curve representing those rational, time-consistent preferences we talked about. But look at the red line, the hyperbolic function. Do you see how incredibly steeply that red line dives in those first few periods compared to the distant future? That steep dive is exactly why our patience completely vanishes when the reward is immediate. Options that look perfectly fine and patient from 20 periods away suddenly feel intolerably costly when they enter that near-term reversal zone. To make this mathematically useful, David Leibson introduced the beta-delta model back in 1997, and man, it has become the absolute empirical workhorse of behavioral economics. I know the formula looks a little complex on screen, but the intuition is actually pretty elegant. Basically, an immediate payoff, that U0 right at the start, is valued exactly at face value. But look at what happens to all the future payoffs inside those brackets. They don't just get the standard per-period discount represented by delta. No, they get hit with an entirely separate multiplier, beta. That beta parameter mathematically isolates our intense, almost irrational bias for the present moment. Now, you might be wondering, what is the actual value of that beta parameter in real life? Well, empirical estimates from, experimental studies and structural savings models, they consistently cluster somewhere between 0.6 and 0.8. Just pause and think about the sheer magnitude of that number for a second. It means that as human beings, we slap a massive 20 to 40% penalty on any future reward simply because it isn't happening right now. It's wild. This is the exact mathematical penalty that literally forces you to hit the snooze button every single morning. The future is discounted immediately, and it's discounted heavily just for being the future. Let's move on and see how this builds in Section 2, Naivete and the Divided Self.
So how does this abstract math actually manifest in our messy human minds? In 1999, researchers O'Donoghue and Robin drew a really brilliant, highly practical distinction. They split present bias people into two distinct types. First up, the sophisticated agent. This person is highly self-aware. They know for a fact their future self is going to be just as impatient as they are today. And because they anticipate this, they actively demand commitment devices. They set rigid deadlines, they lock up their savings, they do whatever it takes. On the other hand, we have the naive agent. Now, this person shares the exact same hyperbolic discount structure, but they just sort of assume their future self will magically be patient and disciplined. They repeatedly make these grand plans, repeatedly fail to execute them, and somehow, amazingly, never update their expectations of themselves. They experience every single failure as this bizarre one-off lapse, rather than, a structural reality of their own brain.
We can actually understand this internal battle perfectly through Thaler and Schifrin's famous planner-doer model. They suggest that within each of us, there are kind of two coexisting selves. There's a far-sighted planner who takes the long view and cares deeply about our lifetime welfare. But then there's also a myopic doer who controls our immediate moment-to-moment actions and literally just wants to eat the cake right now. So self-control is essentially an internal principal agent problem. The planner has to consciously design rules, budgets, and commitment devices to constrain the doer's impatience. And this is absolutely crucial because of something called ego depletion. Willpower isn't just infinite, it's a highly depletable resource. It's like a battery. The planner has to design systems that don't rely entirely on the doer's willpower, simply because that willpower is absolutely going to run out.
Which brings us to Section 3, Markets that Exploit You.
Look, if academics know exactly how our self-control fails, you can be absolutely certain that profit-driven businesses do too. And notice how choice architecture in standard contracts is totally deliberately engineered to target the naive, present-biased consumer. Let's look at the famous gym membership data from Della Vigna and Malmendier. Consumers consistently wildly overestimate their future attendance. So what do gyms do? They employ a strategy of front-loading the benefits and making cancellation practically impossible. Consumers end up paying far, far more on a monthly contract than they would have if they just paid a simple per-visit fee. Similarly, in the credit card market, Ausable's research shows that consumers wildly underestimate the balances they're going to carry in the future. Credit card companies know this for a fact, so they offer these amazing teaser introductory rates to capture your immediate desire for liquidity while heavily backloading the really high costs that the naive consumer incorrectly believes they'll just magically avoid.
But honestly, nowhere is this more stark than in the grim reality of payday lending. Before heavy regulation stepped in, these loans carried staggering annualized interest rates. We're talking between 300 and 1,500%. The industry often argued, hey, borrowers are making rational, informed choices. But the data completely refutes that. It shows that rollover, meaning taking a new loan just to pay the old one, is actually the common, modal outcome. It is not a rare exception. These contracts actively exploit the naive borrower's false expectation that they'll repay the loan quickly. Interestingly, research by Bertrand and Morse show that standard APR disclosure, it barely helps at all. But when you frame the debt in concrete terms, like physically saying you will repay £150 for a £100 loan, take-up drops significantly. Activating accurate concrete beliefs about the future works so much better than throwing abstract percentages at people.
So let's look at the flip side in Section 4, the ethics of intervention.
If markets are actively exploiting this behavior, what should we do about it? Well, when a regulator decides to step in, say to cap payday loans or enforce mandatory cooling-off periods, they are engaging in paternalism. And make no mistake about what this means in practice. A regulator is actively, intentionally overriding a choice that a consumer explicitly wants to make in that exact moment. They are literally denying a present preference in the name of the consumer's long-run welfare. From a strict, standard economic viewpoint, this is highly controversial, right? It requires a much, much stronger justification than merely observing, oh, well, people make bad choices sometimes. So the absolutely crucial point here is how we actually justify this ethically. And Thaler and Schifrin's dual self framework provides a really powerful defense. The argument goes like this. The naive borrower does not in any meaningful sense choose the outcome they are heading toward. The planner has been systematically deceived about what the doer is actually going to do. Therefore, and this quote on screen captures the ethical essence perfectly, intervention on behalf of the planner is not overriding genuine preferences, it is correcting a manipulation of a divided self. Basically, the contract was designed to exploit a false belief, so stepping in and intervening simply levels the playing field.
But here's the fascinating dissonance that regulators have to wrestle with every single day. The exact same strict contract can be two completely different things depending entirely on who signs it. Look at this comparison. For a sophisticated consumer, an annual gym membership with a huge cancellation fee is a genuine commitment device. They actively demand it to keep themselves in line. It totally serves the planner's long-term goals. But for the naive consumer,
That exact same contract structure is a pure exploitation mechanism. It traps them and extracts revenue from their naive doer, who just keeps putting off cancellation until tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. Ethically, the mechanism is identical. The only difference is the beneficiary. And that brings us to the profound, almost impossible difficulty of regulating divided selves in a free market. I really want to leave you with this provocative question to ponder. When a transaction takes place, is a payday lender serving a genuine, rational, present need for a sophisticated borrower who just desperately needs immediate liquidity? Or are they deliberately exploiting a highly predictable psychological failure of a naive borrower who has absolutely no idea they are about to be trapped in a cycle of debt? In the real world, from the outside looking in, both borrowers look exactly the same. They sign the exact same paper. How a regulator balances the needs of the sophisticated against the protection of the naive is easily one of the greatest ethical challenges of modern economics. Anyway, thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this changes how you look at your next financial decision.